Hello, everyone. Wednesday, November 17th, 8:58 a.m. Awesome reading at Mass this morning that I just wanted to go over. So, a couple things. I want to read the first reading from Mass this morning, which is out of the book of Maccabees. And then I want to just comment on something. Actually, I'll do that first. So, last night I posted a link to a video on BitChute. And then I pulled it down. And so I'm like going back and forth with if I want to acknowledge this video or not for two reasons. Here's my concern with it. Number one, I think there's a lot of really accurate information in it concerning the vax. But I believe the man, he's supposed to be, I forget, brother, I don't know. I forget his name. Brother something. I don't know that he's in communion with the church. I really don't know anything about him. I should probably research him before I post this link. But he does have a lot of valid points about the vax. He's evidently somewhere in Italy. And a couple things I did not like about it, though, was that I did not feel that he was expressing this information out of a place of love, and it was more of a fear mongering, fear porn agenda, which we have to steer clear of. There's one thing to discuss facts, and there's another thing to make you scared of your neighbor or your spouse or who's ever in your household. So in this video, he says a couple things I didn't like. The first being, if you live with somebody who has gotten that, then you should not live with them anymore. You should go out into the country and arm up with guns and things like that. And obviously, my opinion on that from yesterday as far as surviving the upcoming events and things like that. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go watch that video. And the other thing I didn't like he threw in at the end was, if you think Bergoglio is the head of the church, then you're deceived, or whatever he said. And honestly, as much as we don't want to admit it, Pope Francis is the Pope. So whoever says Pope Francis is the Pope, isn't the Pope, I normally stop following, because you're obviously deceived by the devil at that point, as far as I'm concerned. Do I like Pope Francis? Do I think he's doing a good job? Well, that's not really up to me to judge. I will say this: I would prefer somebody who would stand up for traditional minded faithful Catholics. That I know. I would prefer a pope who does not advocate for the death vax. That I know. But he also says some great things. So who am I? I'm nobody. I shouldn't be judging anyone. And I'm surely not going to say that the man who is sitting on the chair of Peter should not be sitting on the chair of Peter. So those are my concerns with it. So that's why I pulled it down. Because here's what happened. I posted that link, but I had only watched the short condensed version of it before I posted it, and I didn't see all the other nonsense that in the full version. But I posted the link to the full version. So anyway, decide for yourself. I'm gonna post the link below. It's on BitChute. It's not gonna make it long on YouTube, and it's regarding the nefarious agenda behind the injection, how it's satanic, how it's likely going to kill a lot of people, and things like this. God help us. So immediately after watching that video, I then go on Facebook, right? And the first thing I see, my jaw just hit the floor. I'm just horrified, and I don't know why. I mean, I see these things on Facebook all the time, but for some reason, it's hitting me different when people are talking about their children getting the injection. Okay, so now we're on a whole different level. Like, it's bad enough that you want to do that, but then now you're making your children get it. And so the first thing I saw when I went on Facebook was from a girl I grew up with. I'm not even going to show the post. I'm not going to mention the names. But there was a whole bunch of other people I grew up with that I was friends with in high school and things like that who were liking and loving this post. And it was her daughter, who is 8, I believe. I think she's 8. It was her vaccine card, her COVID vaccine card, with, showing that she had gotten the first jab yesterday or whenever it was posted. I think it was actually the day before. And the commentary on it was blank. She put her daughter's name, did a thing today, so proud of her. Okay. And then the comment section was even more horrifying. talking about that's what a hero looks like and all this stuff. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, you know what? Like, we're so messed up in society right now that we are telling our children that they can pick their gender, but we're coercing them into getting things that they don't even know the background of. So why don't we have a national discussion? If we're going to push the injection, especially in schools, I'm getting fired up. God help me. I can't help it. I pray for calmness and inner peace, but there's a righteous anger that I cannot get away from. And I can only imagine if I'm feeling this way, how God is feeling right now. Why don't we tell our kids, why don't we educate them in the school system about how these injections were made? How about we do that and then let them decide? Because chances are any normal kid with a semi-formed conscience living in innocence is going to say, I'm absolutely not getting anything that was derived from dead babies. Like, no kid is going to go along with that. So, but we're not telling them that. We're just covering the whole thing up and acting like it doesn't exist. Not to mention the health problems that go along with it, okay? Not to mention that it doesn't work. It's failed. It doesn't work. Go read the statistics. It doesn't work. So, I woke up with that heavy on my heart this morning, praying for this person. Actually, I didn't sleep last night. I'll be honest with you. I didn't. That's how disturbed I am by the fact that they want to, first of all, blame 5 to 11-year-olds for inflation in America, because the 5 to 11-year-olds who are unvaxxed are the reason that nobody's going out in public, which isn't true. Plenty of people are out in public, and I'm sure it has nothing to do with the shipping containers sitting in the middle of the ocean. We're not going to talk about that. Or the fact that, what's his name, Booty Judge, the gay federal transportation guy goes on paternity leave in the middle of the shipping crisis. Yes, you heard me right, paternity leave. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with my 5 to 11, my 2 kids who fall between 5 and 11 not getting this. That's what they're saying. So, and now if your kid gets this, apparently from what the general consensus is that they're courageous, brave, and heroes. So this morning when I woke up after not sleeping, I pretty much went to bed at my normal time, which was, I don't know, probably about 10:30. I slept until 12 midnight, woke up, went back to bed until 2:30ish, after a horrible dream that I'm not getting into, but it was horrible. Said some prayers, said the Chaplet of Divine Mercy, went back to sleep for a little while around 4 and woke up at 6. So my night was not good, and I think I'm just really having a problem with people getting this for their children, and it is disturbing me at a soul level. So anyway, so after this morning, I was so tired. I'm like, I don't even want to go to mass. Like, I just want to sit in my bed and sleep. But I forced myself to get up. Obviously I had to drop my kids off at school, so I forced myself to take a shower and get dressed. Cause like, I'm like one of those people. I will not go to mass looking like I rolled out of bed. I just won't do it. I just feel like it's disrespectful. If you're one of those people, whatever, that's between you and God. I personally feel like it's disrespectful. So I did force myself to shower and get dressed and go. And I was so happy I did, because I took so much comfort in the first reading, which I'm going to read for you right now. And obviously this is I go to a Novus Ordo parish, because I just have to do what I live in the Bible Belt. We are not Catholic here, so there are very few parishes that even exist, let alone traditional parishes. It's just not a thing. So I have to do what I have to do. So, with that being said, I do stand out like a sore thumb in my Novus Ordo parish. I wear my veil. I receive communion on the tongue, on my knees. Whatever. I don't care. I stopped caring a long time ago about what people think of me. So, first reading is kind of long. Bear with me, but it's from 2 Maccabees 7:1, 20 through 31. And a word to the wise, if you're one of these mothers celebrating the death jab, that your kids are getting the death jab, you need to read this. And it's from the book of Maccabees. So if you have a Bible that does not contain the book of Maccabees, you need to ask yourself why. Whew. It happened that 7 brothers with their mother were arrested and tortured with whips and scourges by the king to force them to eat pork in violation of God's law. So we're back on the pork thing from yesterday. Most admirable and worthy of everlasting remembrance was the mother, who saw her 7 sons perish in a single day, yet bore it courageously because of her hope in the Lord, filled with a noble spirit that stirred her womanly heart with manly courage. I want to pause there because what immediately popped in my head was a quotation by St. Hildegard, which says that men are full of strong courage and women are full of sensible spiritual strength. And that's so true. But in this instance, her heart was stirred. The Lord gave her a grace to have manly courage, which we should all take comfort in, that under persecution, the Lord will give us the courage we need. She exhorted each one of them in the language of their ancestors with these words. And that's so important. In the language of their ancestors. And now you understand, why do they want to take away our language? Well, because that's what evil does. It separates people from their roots. It wants people to forget where they came from. I do not know how you came into existence in my womb. It was not I who gave you the breath of life, nor was it I who set in order the elements of which each of you is composed. Therefore, since it is the Creator of the universe who shapes each man's beginning, as he brings about the origin of everything, he, in his mercy, will give you back both breath and life, because you now disregard yourselves for the sake of his law. Wow, so that just puts the whole my body, my choice argument to bed. But I guess those people who believe that don't really believe in scripture anyway. But there are Catholics, like our president, who think it's a woman's right to choose when this is clearly saying the opposite. This mother, after watching her sons perish, is saying, I do not know how you came into existence in my womb. It was not I who gave you the breath of life, nor was it I who set in order the elements of which each of you is composed. Therefore, since it is the Creator of the universe who shapes each man's beginning, as he brings about the origin of everything, he in his mercy will give you back both breath and life, because you now disregard yourselves for the sake of his law. Antiochus, suspecting insult in her words, thought he was being ridiculed. As the youngest brother was still alive, the king appealed to him, not with mere words, but with promises on oath, to make him rich and happy if he would abandon his ancestral customs. He would make him his friend and entrust him with high office. When the youth paid no attention to him at all, the king appealed to the mother, urging her to advise her boy to save his life. After he had urged her for a long time, she went through the motions of persuading her son. In derision of the cruel tyrant, she leaned over, close to her son, and said in their native language, Son, have pity on me, who carried you in my womb for 9 months, nursed you for 3 years, brought you up, educated and supported you to your present age. I beg you, child, to look at the heavens and the earth, and see all that is in them. Then you will know that God did not make them out of existing things. And in the same way the human race came into existence. And in the same way the human race came into existence. Do not be afraid of this executioner, but be worthy of your brothers and accept death, so that in the time of mercy I may receive you again with them. She had scarcely finished speaking when the youth said, What are you waiting for? I will not obey the king's command. I obey the command of the law given to our fathers through Moses. But you, who have contrived every kind of affliction for the Hebrews, will not escape the hands of God. Whoa, let's unpack that for a second. So, right off the bat, this mother is obviously somebody that we need to imitate as mothers. Specifically as mothers. She is a foreshadowing of the Blessed Mother, of the Blessed Virgin, obviously. We can see that in her obedience and loyalty to God, first of all. We see that in her encouraging her sons to embrace their cross, which in this case led to their earthly death, with the faith and understanding that it was God's will that this happened and that God will raise them up. So that's profound. In a world today where you are only considered to care about your children in the way the world cares about the children, this is extremely controversial and counterculture. As mothers, we are called to give life, and not just physical life, but primarily life, spiritual life. Our number one goal needs to be the well-being of our kids' souls before it is anything else, before the well-being of their body or their mind, I guess I shouldn't say mind, but their feelings, things like that. Like the well-being of their soul needs to take priority over everything. And when you consistently do that, they understand, they listen, and they go out into the world with that understanding, with that loyalty to God, with those beliefs. I'll give you an example of my own life. Last week or the week before, maybe, we had student teacher, parent teacher conferences. My kids go to a Catholic school, and the teacher had brought up a point that my daughter, now mind you, my daughter is the complete opposite of me. She's 9 years old. She's the sweetest little girl you'll ever meet. Totally non-confrontational, doesn't even like contact sports because she doesn't like taking the ball from people. She does basketball purely as a social thing. Gets embarrassed if we go somewhere and I refuse to wear a mask. Like she's just a sweet, innocent little girl. Gentle as they come. So I always get worried that she's going to be easily influenced and easily swayed. So I went to the parent-teacher conference, and the teacher had brought up that in mass, because they have mass at school, my daughter specifically asks every time to please let her go to the line of the priest, in the priest's communion line for communion. Now, my daughter has never received communion from a Eucharistic minister, and my daughter has never touched the body of Christ with her hands. She has always received, from the first day of her first communion, kneeling and on the tongue from the priest, sometimes, if the circumstances dictate, from a deacon. She's never received communion from a Eucharistic minister. And so, honestly, like, I didn't know how that was going to go once she started to go to, mass at the school and what was going to happen. So normally when I had seen her, because I will attend the mass as well, it's in our church, 8 o'clock mass, I would see her always sitting in the section where the priest goes anyway, so it was never an issue. But now when her class does the readings and things like that, they sit off to the side where the Eucharistic ministers are. And so I was like kind of wondering how that was going to play out. And the girl, she spoke up for herself, and she said, and the teacher wasn't saying it like it was a problem, but she was asking me, like, is this a legitimate thing that she's taught at home, or is she just trying to pull something, basically? And I was like, no, like, this is what I teach my kids. We don't believe in Eucharistic ministers, which was a hard thing for me to say because the teacher is a Eucharistic minister. So I don't know, but I was like, we don't believe that they should be in the church, and they're just for extraordinary circumstances and, maybe to bring communion to the sick and homebound or whatever. I said, but my daughter has never received communion in the hand or from a Eucharistic minister. And at the beginning of the pandemic, the priest had asked that if we wanted to receive on the tongue, that we only go to their line or the deacon's line. So that's kind of how that started. But when I started thinking about it more, I'm like, no, this is the right way. Like, this is what we need to do. This is what we always need to do. So that's an example of, she might be a kind and gentle and non-confrontational soul, but she's loyal. She is above all a loyal soul. And I think we can see how the words of the mother in Maccabees and her loyalty to God was then given to her sons. Her words encouraged her sons, who obviously respected her enough to listen to her and be loyal to her words, but also to God and his laws as well. And that is the type of mothers we need to be. And I'm harping on mothers today, not only because it's a reading, but as mothers, we are gifted with intuitions in regards to our kids because we are the nurturers, we are the caretakers, the primary caretakers, whereas men are the providers and the protectors. They're given a different skill set. They're not given the skill set of, you know, trying to figure out what's wrong with the child when they're sick and things like this, and nurturing and comforting and encouraging. They encourage in a different way, don't get me wrong. And so as mothers, the healthcare decisions, primarily rest with us. We're the ones who kind of make those decisions, the healthcare, the education, things like that. And if we're encouraging our children to eat the pork, so to speak, we need to really assess what we're our priorities, because at that point, if you're convincing your child or persuading your child to do something that is you perceive as beneficial for their health and for the community, but it's not totally aligns with the right thing to do. I mean, I don't think I don't think you have to be a Catholic to understand that injections derived from killed children, killed babies, is probably not the right thing to do. Like, I don't understand why this is not, I just don't get it. I don't understand how I grew up with that girl. I don't understand how I grew up where I grew up and didn't turn out anything like those people. Like, I don't get any of it. So, I do know that we need to be like the mother in Maccabees, though. And I do know that you should not be getting your children an experimental injection. You should not be persuading them to do that, especially when there's moral and spiritual implications. I do know that the Blessed Mother can help you with this because she is the most perfect mother and she can offer assistance in raising our children. Now, men, if you have a wife who seems to be going off the rails here and trying to convince you that this is the right thing to do, then you need to remember the garden. You need to remember how Eve was deceived and it caused the whole family to fall. Okay? And you need to put an end to it. You need to put your foot down and you need to be a little bit assertive and demanding if need be. Because as the head of the family, that's your job. You have the authority. You are the head of the family. And you will have to answer for any harm your wife does to your children, believe it or not. You will. So, posting the link below to that video. Like I said, there are things in it that are verifiably true that he talks about. And there is a lot of fear mongering, which is why I initially took it down, because I don't think spreading fear and treating the vaccinated as lepers is the answer, because that's what Satan does. That's what they do to us. Like, that's how the vaccinated treat the unvaccinated. So I believe in rising above it, and light will drive out darkness. We don't try to beat them at their own game. That's not what we're about as Christians. So I'm going to post it for the information, but please don't buy into the fear mongering. And if you have a wife or somebody in your household who is vaccinated, please don't leave your wife over it. Like, you know what I mean? It has the potential to cause a lot of division. I don't know. I'll let you decide, but that's just my input on it. And I hope y'all have a great day. Joan of Arc Media out.